she whispered. "She tried to hurt me, and what this millionaire did next will shock you." Avery Claremont never liked early mornings, but ever since his doctors warned him about his skyrocketing blood pressure, he forced himself to take a quiet walk each dawn through the vast gardens of his Montgomery estate. That morning, the sky was a dull gray, threatening rain, and the scent of wet earth drifted through the air as he sipped bitter black coffee from a porcelain cup. He was thinking about the endless meetings waiting for him that day: contracts, phone calls, investors demanding reports, when something strange caught his eye near the old stone fountain at the far end of the garden. At first, he thought it was a small animal, but as he squinted, he realized it was a child. A little girl, no older than 8 or 9, sat cross-legged on the cold stone edge, her thin arms hugging a worn-out teddy bear. Her hair was tangled and fell around her small face like a dark curtain. She looked completely out of place in his immaculate garden, which only his staff and close friends ever visited. Avery frowned, glancing over his shoulder, half expecting to see one of the maids or groundskeepers nearby. But the garden was empty, silent except for the gentle trickle of the fountain water. "Hey," he called, his voice deep and steady from years of boardroom negotiations. "What are you doing here?" The girl flinched. Her wide eyes snapped up to him, and for a heartbeat, Avery saw a flash of fear in them. Then she swallowed and spoke so softly he could barely hear. "My name is Larissa," she whispered, clutching her bear tighter. "Miss Dalsey said I could play here." Avery's brow furrowed. Miss Dalsey was the new housekeeper he'd hired just a month ago. Efficient, discreet, and so far, seemingly trustworthy. But this? Bringing strange children onto the grounds without telling him? "Miss Dalsey told you that?" Avery asked slowly, studying the girl's pale, thin face. Larissa nodded quickly. Her eyes darted around as if searching for someone else to confirm her story. Avery took a slow breath, fighting the flicker of irritation tightening his chest. He hated surprises, especially ones involving children on his property without his knowledge. But the girl looked scared enough already. "All right," he said, forcing his voice into something gentler. "Next time, you tell Miss Dalsey to ask me first. Understand?" Larissa nodded again. He turned and walked away, heading back toward the house, though he couldn't shake the unease building in the pit of his stomach. The image of her thin arms wrapped around that tattered bear stayed with him as he stepped inside his grand foyer, marble floors echoing beneath his polished shoes. The rest of the day he sat through meetings, signed off on contracts, answered emails from impatient investors. Yet every time he looked up, he swore he saw that little girl's eyes, wide and haunted, staring at him from across the polished conference table. By evening, as he walked the hallways of his massive, echoing house, he realized he couldn't stop thinking about her. Who was she? Why was she really here? And why had Miss Dalsey brought her to his garden without so much as mentioning it? That night, long after everyone else had gone to bed, Avery stood by the window in his study, staring into the dark garden lit only by the soft glow of the moon. Somewhere out there, he knew, the little girl had sat alone that morning, hugging a bear as if it were the only thing standing between her and some unseen terror. He told himself he would ask Dalsey about it in the morning, but deep down, he felt something he hadn't felt in years, a slow, gnawing sense of dread, as though some shadow had slipped into his carefully controlled world, and somehow, he knew this was only the beginning. The next morning, Avery woke before dawn, restless and uneasy, as if some invisible weight pressed down on his chest. He dressed quickly, pulling on a tailored suit jacket out of habit, and moved through the silent house toward the kitchen, where he expected to find Dalsey already bustling about. But the kitchen was empty, save for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the old clock above the doorway. He stepped out onto the terrace, coffee in hand, eyes scanning the garden where he'd seen Larissa the day before. At first there was nothing, just the soft rustle of wind in the trees and the metallic glint of morning dew on stone paths. Then he noticed movement near the fountain, the same small figure, sitting quietly on the stone edge, hugging that same battered teddy bear. His pulse quickened. He set his coffee down and strode across the garden, his polished shoes wetting in the grass. "Larissa," he called more softly this time. She looked up immediately. Her eyes were puffy, rimmed red, as if she'd been crying all night. Avery felt an unexpected pang in his chest. "Are you okay?" he asked, crouching down to her level. She opened her mouth, hesitated, and then whispered, "Miss Dalsey. She told me not to talk to you. She said you'd send me away." Avery felt his brows knit in confusion. "Send you away? Why would I do that?" Larissa squeezed the bear so tight its ragged seams strained at the edges. She bit her lip hard enough that a tiny bead of blood appeared. Because I told her I saw her putting something in the drink she gave me yesterday, she said, her voice trembling. It smelled weird, and when I said I didn't want to drink it, she got mad. She grabbed my arm and squeezed so hard it hurt. Avery felt a cold spike of anger shoot through him. So sudden and sharp, it made him clench his fists. What did she try to give you? He asked quietly, forcing his voice to stay calm. I don't know, Larissa whimpered. It was in a pink cup. She smiled and said it would make me feel better. But when I said no, she got really, really angry. She said I talked too much. Avery drew in a slow breath, though every instinct screamed at him to storm back into the house and confront Dulcie on the spot. But years in business had taught him patience, and that sometimes the truth lay hidden beneath carefully set traps. Did you drink any of it? He asked. Larissa shook her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. I threw it away in the trash by the big tree when she left the room. Please don't tell her. She said she'd make me disappear if I said anything. Avery's heart pounded. He reached out, gently brushing a tear from the girl's cheek with his thumb. Yeah, you did the right thing by telling me, he said. And I promise you, I'm not going to let anyone hurt you. The girl's lip trembled. Do you believe me? Avery swallowed, feeling an old, buried ache stir in his chest. So many people in his life had lied, betrayed, and manipulated him. He had learned to trust no one. But this little girl's voice rang with a fear so raw and desperate, it felt impossible to fake. I believe you, he whispered. For the rest of the morning, Avery kept Larissa close. He brought her into the house, sat her by the large bay window with a blanket, and told Dulcie she was to leave them alone. Dulcie's face tightened at the order, just for an instant, but it was enough for Avery to notice. Of course, Mr. Claremont, she said, bowing her head before leaving the room. Avery called Corbin, his longtime security chief and confidant, and ordered him to check the trash bin by the tree. Half an hour later, Corbin returned holding a pink plastic cup sealed in a clear evidence bag. That smells off, boss, Corbin said in a low voice. I'll get it tested. Avery nodded, jaw clenched. He watched as Corbin left, then turned his eyes to the hallway where Dulcie had disappeared. Something was very wrong in his house, and he would get to the bottom of it, no matter what it took. Later that day, Avery sat alone in his office. The heavy oak door shut tight behind him. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, cutting sharp lines across the rich mahogany desk. His phone buzzed with unanswered calls from shareholders and managers across the country, but he ignored them all. His mind was consumed by the image of Larissa, her small hands trembling as she clutched that dirty teddy bear, and the flicker of cold defiance he'd seen in Dulcie's eyes when he told her to stay away. Corbin returned just after noon, stepping into the room without knocking, his boots heavy on the marble floor. In his gloved hand, he held a small report folder, the kind Avery had come to dread during years of crisis management. It's bad, Corbin said, voice low. We ran a quick analysis at the lab we work with. Traces of diazepam, mixed with something else we couldn't ID on the spot. But it's definitely not just juice, Avery. Avery's stomach twisted. He gripped the edge of the desk so hard his knuckles turned white. She was trying to drug her, Avery murmured. Looks that way, Corbin said. Maybe worse. I've got the guys checking Dulcie's background again. We rushed the first vetting. There were gaps in her past employment history. I'm pulling everything we can find. Avery leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling as he tried to quiet the rage boiling inside him. He'd built empires, dismantled competitors, ruined men who tried to destroy him in the boardroom. But this, someone threatening a child in his own home, felt personal in a way nothing in his career had prepared him for. I want eyes on her at all times, Avery said finally, voice cold. She doesn't leave this property without my say-so. And get the rest of the staff out of the house today. Tell them there's a security sweep. Keep it quiet. I don't want her suspecting anything. Corbin nodded once. You got it, boss. The rest of the afternoon, Avery stayed close to Larissa. He brought her into his office, where she sat curled up on the leather couch, clutching her bear and glancing nervously toward the door every time footsteps echoed outside. He asked her soft questions about where she had come from, who Dulcie was to her, and how she'd ended up in his garden that first day. But every time he pressed too hard, Larissa's eyes filled with tears, and she fell silent. She said bad things would happen, Larissa whispered at one point, voice barely audible. She said you would send me away to a place with locked doors. I don't want to go. Please don't make me go. Avery felt his throat tighten. He crouched beside her, brushing hair from her face. I won't send you anywhere, he promised. No one is going to hurt you again. Do you understand me? She looked at him, searching his face as if testing the truth of his words. Then slowly, she nodded. Hours passed. Dulcie drifted in and out of rooms, her face a mask of polite obedience. But Avery noticed the way her eyes followed him, flicking every so often to the corner where Larissa sat. By evening, Corbin slipped into the office again, closing the door behind him. I dug up something strange, he murmured. Her real name might not even be Dulcie Miller. We found an old arrest record under the name Rosalie Dalton. Same photo, different ID. Petty fraud, check scams, a sealed juvenile record. Nothing major on paper. But you don't go to this much trouble with fake names unless you're hiding something big. Avery felt a chill ripple through him. He looked past Corbin, through the glass doors where Larissa had fallen asleep on the couch, her small chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. We need proof, Avery said, jaw clenched. I want her to show her hand. Tonight, Corbin raised an eyebrow. You're thinking bait? Avery nodded. Exactly. We let her think I'm out of the house. Leave Larissa in the sitting room unprotected. Watch how Dulcie moves. If she tries anything, we have it on camera, and we take her down. Corbin gave a grim smile. I'll set the trap, boss. As night fell over the mansion, Avery's staff quietly cleared out. Hidden cameras blinked to life in the corners of the sitting room. Avery and Corbin retreated to a small security room on the upper floor, where rows of monitors showed every corner of the house. Avery watched the feed with ice in his veins. He told himself he wouldn't move too early. He needed Dulcie to reveal exactly what she wanted, to catch every word, every threat. He needed to know how deep the rot went before he ripped it out. In the grainy screen light, he watched Dulcie move silently through the hallway, pausing by the sitting room doorway, her shadow stretching long across the carpet. She stood there, staring at the sleeping child, and Avery felt his hands clench into fists. This was his house, his life, and no one was going to tear it apart again. Under the low hum of the security monitors, Avery watched the image of Dulcie linger in the hallway, her pale face turned toward the sitting room, where Larissa lay curled up beneath a soft blanket. Every few seconds, Dulcie glanced over her shoulder, as if checking to see if anyone was nearby. And then her eyes flicked back to the girl with a gaze so cold it sent shivers down Avery's spine. Ah, wait, Avery whispered to Corbin, who hovered just behind him. Let her move. I want every word. Dulcie stepped into the sitting room. For a moment, she stood completely still, hands clasped in front of her, head tilted slightly as she watched the child sleep. Then she moved closer, bending over Larissa so that her face almost touched the little girl's hair. Her lips moved, and Avery leaned forward, straining to hear the faint audio feed from the hidden mic. You stupid little rat, Dulcie whispered, her voice a serpent's hiss. You think you're safe now, don't you? Think he'll protect you? He's weak. He's always been weak. Just like your mother said. Avery's heart stopped. Mother? He glanced at Corbin, who was already scrawling notes on a pad, eyes narrowed. I should have ended this yesterday, Dulcie continued, her voice tightening with suppressed fury. But you just had to go whining to him. If you open your mouth again, I swear I'll make sure no one finds you. Not this time. Larissa stirred in her sleep, a small whimper escaping her lips. Dulcie straightened and looked around the room, eyes darting to the corners. For one terrifying second, she seemed to stare straight into the hidden camera lens, but then she turned away, heading for the side table, where Avery knew he'd left a glass of water for Larissa. Slowly, methodically, Dulcie pulled a small vial from the pocket of her apron. Now, Avery snapped, and Corbin was gone in an instant, tearing out of the security room, boots thudding on the floorboards. Avery watched on the monitors the sitting room door burst open. Corbin rushed in, grabbing Dulcie's wrist just as she started to unscrew the vial cap. She let out a snarl, twisting violently, knocking the glass onto the floor where it shattered with a crash. You think you're clever, huh? Dulcie screamed, voice breaking with manic rage. She ruined everything? Just like her whore mother. Corbin slammed her down onto the carpet, pinning her arms behind her back as she spat curses at him. Avery was already running down the hallway, his pulse pounding so hard he could barely hear. He burst into the sitting room, nearly tripping over the broken glass, and saw Corbin restraining Dulcie on the ground. Larissa had woken up, eyes wide with terror, clutching her bear so hard the seams split open. Avery rushed to her, pulling her into his arms, whispering over and over that she was safe, that no one would hurt her. Dulcie thrashed on the floor, face red, eyes wild. "She deserved it," she screeched. "Your precious little girl. She's just like her. She'll betray you too. Just wait." "Get her out," Avery snapped. Corbin dragged Dulcie from the room, her shrieks echoing off the high ceilings. Avery held Larissa tighter, feeling her tears soak through his shirt, and forced himself to breathe, to focus on the small, shaking child in his arms. "It's okay," he murmured. "You're safe. She can't hurt you now." But even as he rocked her gently, Avery's mind spun in circles around the word that Dulcie had spat with such venom. Mother. What did Dulcie mean by that? How did she know anything about Larissa's mother? And why did her hatred sound so deeply personal? Avery knew he would get answers, soon. But for now, the only thing that mattered was the trembling child clinging to him, the one person in the world he would protect with everything he had left. The house was quiet again, though the echoes of Dulcie's screams still seemed to linger in the walls like a ghost that refused to leave. Avery sat on the edge of the sofa in the sitting room. Larissa huddled against his side, her small hands gripping the fabric of his shirt so tightly it felt as though she was holding on for life itself. He ran his fingers gently through her tangled hair, whispering soft reassurances, even as his own mind spun in chaos. He didn't know how long they sat like that. Minutes, hours. The night outside deepened into inky black. The distant hoot of an owl, the only sign the world was still moving beyond the heavy curtains. At last, Corbin stepped into the doorway, face grave, holding a thin manila folder in one large hand. She's in the security room," Corbin said quietly. "We had the doc sedate her. Won't be screaming again for a while." Avery nodded. "What did you find?" Corbin opened the folder and placed it gently on the coffee table in front of Avery. "We got deeper into her records, and there's more. Her real name is Rosalie Dalton. We found old files from a foster home in Louisiana. Turns out she had a sister. Name was Sierra Dalton." Avery felt the blood drain from his face. The name hit him like a blow to the chest, dredging up memories he had tried so hard to bury. A slender young woman with bright eyes and a soft laugh, the one person he had once believed he would marry before everything fell apart. "Sierra," he whispered. "God, she left me, disappeared without a word. I thought," he shook his head, feeling old bitterness and hurt rising up like bile. "Yeah," Corbin said, "and we ran the timeline. She vanished about 9 years ago, turned up dead in a fire 2 years later. Police ruled it accidental. No record of a child, but..." He looked down at Larissa, whose wide eyes blinked up at him, tears still streaking her cheeks. Avery swallowed hard. "You think Larissa is, Sierra's daughter?" Corbin gave a slow nod. "Could explain why Rosalie Dulcie targeted her. Maybe she blamed the kid for something. Or maybe she wanted revenge on you for what happened between you and Sierra. Either way, boss, this is bigger than we thought." Avery's heart pounded so hard he thought it might crack his ribs. He pulled Larissa into his lap, cradling her gently, feeling the tremors still coursing through her small frame. "Larissa," he murmured, his voice breaking, "can you tell me something, sweetheart? Did your mommy ever talk about me?" "About Avery?" Larissa sniffled and wiped her nose on the back of her sleeve. She nodded slowly. "She had a picture," Larissa whispered, "of you. She said you were kind, that she wished things had been different. But Aunt Rosie always said you were evil, that you ruined everything. I didn't understand." Avery felt something crack open in his chest, an old wound he thought had healed, but that now bled fresh pain into his veins. "Your mother loved you," he said softly, choking back tears. "I loved her once, too. I never wanted anything bad to happen to her." Larissa clung to him tighter. "Aunt Rosie said Mommy hurt you, that she betrayed you." "Did she?" Avery closed his eyes, remembering those last months with Sierra, how she had grown distant, frightened, whispering about people following her, about secrets she couldn't share. He had thought she was cheating, or lying, or losing her mind. In his anger and pride, he had pushed her away, told her never to come back, and then she had vanished. "No," he whispered, voice hoarse. "She didn't betray me. I failed her." Corbin cleared his throat quietly. "Well, what do you want to do with Rosalie, boss?" Avery looked up, eyes blazing. She stays locked up until we hand her over to the authorities. I want her charged with attempted murder, child endangerment, everything we can throw at her. But first, I want to know everything she knows. About Sierra, about where Larissa has been all this time. I want every secret she's been hiding. Corbin nodded. I'll make it happen. When he left, Avery leaned his head against Larissa's, closing his eyes, breathing in the soft scent of dust and soap in her hair. He felt older than he ever had before, tired in a way that settled into his bones. But beneath the exhaustion, a fierce protectiveness burned bright, hot as fire. Whoever this little girl was, whatever ghosts haunted their past, he would not let anyone hurt her again. He would tear the world apart to keep her safe. And maybe, just maybe, find a way to make peace with the ghost of the woman he had once loved and lost. The dawn broke gray and cold over the estate, a thin mist hanging low over the garden, where just days ago, Avery had first seen Larissa sitting by the fountain. Now the fountain was silent, its waters stilled by the chill of the morning. And inside the house, everything felt hushed and tense, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Avery hadn't slept. He had spent the night in the sitting room with Larissa curled up beside him, her tiny body pressed close for warmth and safety. Every time she shifted in her sleep or whimpered from some lingering nightmare, Avery's heart clenched painfully, his mind replaying Dulcie's venomous words over and over again. He could still see her face, twisted in rage, eyes wild, as she screamed about betrayal, about Sierra, about the past Avery had tried so hard to forget. The pieces were falling into place now, and the picture they formed left him sick to his stomach. When Larissa finally stirred awake, blinking sleepily up at him, he brushed the hair gently from her forehead and whispered, "It's all right. You're safe now." "Will she come back?" Larissa asked, her voice small and shaky. "No," Avery said firmly. "She can't hurt you anymore, I promise." Corbin appeared in the doorway just after sunrise, looking exhausted but resolute. He handed Avery a flash drive. "We got the recording," he said. "The entire thing. Her threats, her ranting about Sierra. It'll be enough to bury her legally, boss." Avery took the drive with a grim nod. "Good. And did she talk?" Corbin hesitated. "Some. It's messy. She keeps switching between blaming you for Sierra's death, saying Sierra ruined everything, and claiming the kid was some sort of leverage. But there's something else. She keeps muttering about a fire, about finishing what was started. I think she was there the night Sierra died." Avery felt the world tilt beneath him. His breath came short and ragged. "I want to hear it," he said. "Every word." They moved into the security room, where the monitors flickered with live feeds of the property. In the corner, Dulcie, Rosalie, sat slumped in a chair, wrists bound, eyes vacant and hollow. A faint speaker crackled as the overnight interrogation playback began. "You think he loved her? You think he would have saved her?" Rosalie's voice was high and shaking with rage. "He left her alone with those people following her, left her to burn just like she deserved." A pause, then her voice dropped into a bitter hiss. "She thought he would come. She cried for him when the smoke came under the door. But he never did. She died hating him. And that child is proof of her betrayal. He didn't even know, did he?" Avery felt something inside him shatter. He staggered back a step, clutching the edge of the desk for balance. His ears rang, his vision blurred with red. "I never knew," he whispered. "God, I never knew she was pregnant." Corbin rested a hand on his shoulder. "Boss, you couldn't have known. You tried to find her when she vanished, remember? You spent months hiring investigators. They all came up empty." But the words offered no comfort. Avery could only picture Sierra trapped in some burning room, crying out for him, waiting for him, believing he had abandoned her. And now the little girl he had unknowingly left behind had nearly been killed by the very woman who had watched Sierra die. Avery turned away from the screen, fighting the urge to smash it with his bare hands. He breathed deep, willing the rage into something he could control. Then, he looked back at Corbin, his eyes hard as iron. "She doesn't get out of here alive until the police take her," he said. "And I want 24-hour security on Larissa, armed. No one gets near her except me or you. Understood?" "Understood," Corbin said, voice equally cold. When they returned to the sitting room, Larissa looked up from where she had been quietly coloring with old crayons on a scrap of paper. "Did she tell you why she hates me?" she asked softly. Avery knelt in front of her, taking her tiny hands in his. "She hated your mother," he said carefully, because of things that happened a long time ago. But none of that is your fault, Larissa. Do you hear me? None of it. Tears welled in her eyes. She said Mommy did bad things. Is that true? Avery swallowed hard, shaking his head. Your mommy was scared. She was in trouble. I didn't help her when I should have, and I'm so sorry for that. But she loved you. I know she did. And I promise you, I won't fail you the way I failed her. Larissa threw her arms around his neck, sobbing into his shoulder. Avery held her tight, his own tears falling hot and silent onto the top of her head. He didn't know how he would fix everything, how he would live with the guilt that now gnawed at his bones like acid, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty. Larissa was his family now, and no one would take her from him. Not ever again. The days that followed blurred together into a tense, surreal haze. The mansion was no longer just Avery's pristine refuge. It had become a fortress. Corbin's men patrolled the halls day and night, radios crackling softly in the shadows, eyes scanning every corridor and entryway with quiet vigilance. Larissa rarely left Avery's side. He moved his meetings to the house, set up a temporary office in the library where she could curl up by the window with her drawings. Every so often, he'd glance over to find her staring out into the garden, eyes distant and sad, as though she were searching for something or someone she couldn't quite name. Avery tried to focus on work, but the words on his computer screen swam and blurred. His mind kept drifting to the playback of Rosalie's interrogation, the venom in her voice, the stark confession that Sierra had died calling out for him, clutching a baby he'd never known existed. Guilt settled into his bones like a sickness. One evening, as the sun dipped low and bathed the library in warm golden light, Larissa set down her crayon and crawled into Avery's lap without a word. She rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady thump of his heart. Did you really love my mommy? She asked softly. Avery swallowed hard, his throat thick. Yes, he whispered, more than anything. She was bright, full of life. I was foolish and proud, and I let that ruin what we had. But I never stopped loving her, Larissa, even when she left. Larissa was silent for a long time. Then, in a tiny voice, she said, I wish I could remember her face. Sometimes I think I can when I close my eyes. But then it goes away. Avery wrapped his arms around her tighter. It's all right, he murmured. I'll help you remember. I'll tell you everything I know about her, all the good things. You deserve to know how wonderful she was. Larissa sniffled and nodded against his chest. Later that night, after she had fallen asleep curled against his side, Avery met Corbin in the hallway. Any word from the DA? Avery asked. They're working on charges, Corbin said. Attempted poisoning, child endangerment, conspiracy. Rosalie's lawyer's already trying to spin insanity. But we've got her on tape. It's going to stick. Avery nodded, jaw clenched. Good. What about the rest? The fire? Corbin hesitated. Local cops are re-examining the file. You were right. There were gaps in the old investigation. Witnesses who never got questioned. Evidence that disappeared. It looks dirty, boss. Real dirty. Avery felt cold fury ignite in his chest. Find out who buried it, he said quietly. I don't care how long it takes. I want to know who let Sierra die. I want to know everything. Corbin nodded. We'll get it. They were silent for a moment. Then Corbin shifted uncomfortably. You're going to keep her, aren't you? He asked, nodding toward the library where Larissa slept. Avery didn't hesitate. She's my daughter, he said. Blood or not, that's who she is now. I failed Sierra. I won't fail her child. Corbin smiled faintly. Didn't think I'd ever see you like this, boss, he said. Never pegged you for the family type. Avery let out a breath, weary but resolute. Neither did I, he murmured. But life has a way of showing you what really matters. Money, power, all of it means nothing if you have no one to protect. No one to love. Corbin clapped him gently on the shoulder. You're doing the right thing, he said. She's got a chance now, thanks to you. Avery watched the moonlight spill through the window, illuminating the sleeping form of the little girl he now knew he would die to protect. For the first time in years, he felt a fragile glimmer of peace, like a soft light breaking through the darkness. But he also knew the fight wasn't over. The ghosts of the past were stirring, secrets still lay buried, and Rosalie's words echoed in his mind like a warning. There were people out there who had wanted Sierra gone, and they might still want Larissa's silence too. He swore to himself in that moment that he would never let them near her. Whatever came next, whatever dark corners he had to drag into the light, he would face it head on. For Sierra, for Larissa, and for the man he had once promised he would become before the world broke him. Weeks passed, and the house slowly began to breathe again, the tension that had wrapped itself around every wall loosening like the last wisps of a fading storm. Rosalie had been transferred to county jail to await trial. Her face splashed across local news reports that speculated wildly about motive, revenge, and the tragic fire from years past. Avery watched it all unfold with grim detachment, focusing instead on the only thing that truly mattered now, Larissa. He enrolled her in a small private school nearby, choosing it for the tight security and gentle staff who specialized in working with children carrying heavy scars. Every morning he rose early, helped her pack her little backpack, and walked her to the sleek black car that Corbin now drove personally, never letting her out of his sight. At first, Larissa had clung to him, terrified at the idea of leaving his side, but with patient coaxing and gentle promises she began to relax. He would wait in the driveway every afternoon, his heart leaping at the sight of her small figure stepping out of the car, her face slowly transforming from wary uncertainty into bright smiles as the days passed. In the evenings, they filled the house with quiet routines, homework at the kitchen table, soft piano music in the background, Larissa reading out loud from picture books, while Avery listened and asked questions, praising every new word she learned. Sometimes she would pause mid-sentence and look up at him, searching his face with wide, serious eyes. "Are you going to go away?" she asked one night, voice trembling. Avery leaned forward, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "No," he whispered. "I'm never leaving you. I promise." She nodded and hugged him fiercely as if trying to anchor herself to him, to the world they were slowly rebuilding together. Outside the walls of the mansion, the investigation into Sierra's death continued. Corbin worked late into the nights, piecing together old files, finding old neighbors who remembered seeing strange cars parked near Sierra's apartment in the weeks before the fire. What they uncovered pointed towards something Avery had long suspected. Sierra hadn't simply been a frightened woman imagining shadows. Someone had been watching her, pressuring her, threatening her, and the fire that had killed her had been no accident. One evening, Corbin came into the study, where Avery was helping Larissa color in a thick sketchbook, filled with bright suns and green trees. "We got confirmation," Corbin said quietly, waiting until Larissa left the room to wash her hands. "It was arson. Paid off the inspector back then to cover it up. We're looking at a name, Clyde Jensen. Small-time fixer, muscle for hire. Word is, he was working for someone else. Someone higher up." Avery felt cold fury coil through him, slow and poisonous. "Find out who," he said, voice low and deadly. "I want their name. I want to look them in the eyes." Corbin nodded. "We will." That night, after Larissa had fallen asleep in her small bed, still clutching the battered teddy bear Avery had quietly stitched back together, he stood at the window of her room, watching the moonlight spill across her peaceful face. He had built empires out of iron and concrete, crushed rivals beneath his boots, but none of it had ever felt as vital, as meaningful as this moment. Standing watch over this tiny life, vowing silently that nothing, no one would ever hurt her. Again, in the weeks that followed, as the investigation tightened around the men who had killed Sierra, Avery began to imagine a future he had once thought lost. A future with Larissa safe, laughing in sunlit gardens, free of fear and nightmares. He started plans for a scholarship foundation in Sierra's name, dedicated to helping women and children in crisis, a way to honor the bright, hopeful woman she had once been and atone, in some small way, for the guilt that still haunted him. One afternoon, Larissa ran into his arms after school, her eyes shining. "I made a friend," she cried happily. "Her name is Marnie, and she wants to come over to play." Avery hugged her tight, burying his face in her soft hair. He had spent so long trapped in the cold solitude of his guilt and regret that he had nearly forgotten what hope felt like. Now it pulsed warm and bright in his chest, carried on the innocent laughter of the little girl he had come to love more fiercely than his own life. That night, as he tucked her into bed, Larissa looked up at him with sleepy eyes. "Will you tell me a story about Mommy again?" she asked. Avery smiled, smoothing the blanket around her small shoulders. "Of course," he said softly. "I'll tell you everything, as many times as you want." And so he did. He told her about Sierra's bright smile, about the way she had loved music and always sang to herself in the kitchen. He told her about the first day he met her, The way her laugh had made the whole world feel new again. And as he spoke, Larissa's eyes fluttered shut, her breathing growing soft and even, a small, contented smile on her lips. Avery sat there long after she drifted into sleep, holding her tiny hand in his. He knew the road ahead would still hold shadows, but he also knew he would never face them alone again. Outside the window, the moon shone bright and clear, and for the first time in years, Avery felt as though the past had finally begun to loosen its grip, making way for something new, something beautiful, a life worth fighting for. I believe this ending is both hopeful and earned. Avery, once hardened by guilt and betrayal, finds his redemption not through vengeance or wealth, but by opening his heart to Larissa, a child who needed protection, love, and the truth about her past. This shift from ruthless tycoon to devoted father shows genuine growth. Though he cannot erase the pain of what happened to Sierra, he honors her memory by becoming the man she once believed he could be. Ultimately, it's a story about second chances, how even the most damaged souls can build something good out of grief, and how love, when given freely and fiercely, can heal wounds deeper than time itself.